Jiro here for Ember Games with a review of Contra Rogue Core, played on a physical PS4 copy for the review, also available physically on Switch and Xbox One. It's been a few years since we've seen a Contra game released, the last being digital-only PS3 and 360 Hardcore Uprising. Switch did see the release of Contra Anniversary Collection earlier in 2019, but I don't believe there's any new content there. Konami gave the reins to Toy Logic for this installment, who, judging from their website, appear to have made contributions to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Smash Up, Kid Icarus on 3DS, as well as something in the Super Smash Bros. Brawl and Wii, but I couldn't find any cross-referencing sources. Instead of the more anticipated side-scrolling 2D run-and-gun formula, Toy Logic and Konami Digital Entertainment went back to something in the same vein as Neo Contra on PlayStation 2. Rogue Core has a shifting, but usually somewhat overhead camera, and you control one of 4 characters using dual sticks, running with the left and aiming with the right. If you don't aim, your character will fire in the direction that you run. There's a main campaign with 41 missions that are replayable at any time, and are selected from within the Rogue Core's base camp. Here you can also change characters, pick your loadouts, and upgrade your gear. Well, in lieu of typical RPG-style gear, you instead get surgery on your character's eyes, chest, brain, and organs. These parts, weapon cores, and weapon modification pieces, called BAD, B-A-D, come in your standard tiered loot colors from gray to green to blue to purple to orange, being legendary. You can perform transplantation, guaranteed for free from the main surgeon, or choose one of the others for chances at bonuses or increased attributes, or fewer attributes if the surgeon fails. Each character can equip 2 weapons at a time, a main and a sub, and all start with a default loadout. New weapons are obtained from killing enemies and come as cores, and require some money and parts back at base camp to make them usable. Weapons have a rating from D+ to S+, and take quite a bit of money, or credits, and specific bad mods as well as experience points, use it in battle, to make the upgrade. In addition, each weapon has a point value where the colored bad mods can be equipped up to the maximum score currently on the weapon. You can add various elemental damage or extra damage while moving, or actually quite a variety of other options. All of the bad, cores, and body parts can be sold for credits to make the upgrades. Now when you're ready to depart, you can go to the mission select screen and you have a few options, including multiplayer. Most co-op is online, with the exception of 4 what they call exploration missions that are procedurally generated levels, and you bet money based on difficulty to enter, and if you die you get nothing and lose the entry fee. I searched for public rooms a couple times for these and unfortunately never found another player. There is some PvP though, but again, I had difficulty finding a match, so I kinda gave up trying. Campaign missions are open 1 or 2 at a time and divided into ranks. There's actually an okay story behind the events here, and it's told via cutscenes that don't start automatically, but instead you have to go to the video log in base camp when it tells you there's a new one. In that same location, you can also view your medals gained for all sorts of activities that don't seem to do much other than populate and count on your profile, and you can also choose a title from one you've earned. Some of these medals are also tied to PlayStation trophies. Okay, with that setup out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about some gameplay. First off, one of the keys to a twin-stick shooter is the utter reliance on the aim with the right stick. Most of the games, including this one, will often place you in a very bullet-dense situation where you have to focus on not getting hit while aiming in the direction you last spotted or you anticipate the enemy to be. Rogue Core has a couple of problems with this. The first being, you have no control over the camera, other than it usually being centered on your character. And more often than not, you'll have enemies out of that view that launch or prepare a charge against you. I think, possibly, to help compensate for that, Toy Logic added some aim assist. As noted, when you press in a general direction and hold it there, you can kinda see your aim start to deviate to hit what it thinks you might be trying to hit. When you're trying to knock out a turret or missile launching enemy behind a group of others, the game will instead shift your aim to a closer enemy, making the aiming feel unresponsive. When a boss has a particular weak point, sometimes even standing point blank in front of it, like when trying to fight these armored tanks, your aim will just deviate for unknown reasons, missing the target. One other issue in regard to aiming is there are platforms. There are changes to terrain level, but your characters only shoot straight. Now there are certain sub-weapons that you can use that will target things above and below your viewpoint, but for the most part, you can try jumping, but you're still going to miss. One of the other things I've heard a lot of people upset about with this game is the overheating of weapons. Yes, both your main and sub-weapons overheat, and have stats that tell you exactly how often that's going to happen. To me, this just felt like another mechanic to learn. It's like the opposite of an active reload in Gears of War or Mercenary Kings. Get to know your weapons, get to know the rhythm of your shots, and simply switch between main and sub if you overheat, which will happen quite often. Now in addition to main and sub weapons, you'll find power-ups that are being carried by little gold helicopter guys holding temporary firepower. There's the spread gun, homing missiles, crusher bomb things, and the laser gun. For me, these often just threw off my rhythm, particularly the laser gun that does damage the longer you hold it on an enemy. The homing missile power-up had a mind of its own too, and often caused me to take more damage than I gave to my enemies. I didn't find a way to drop these either, so sometimes I'd just sit there and expend all the ammo until it was gone. You also have a dash move, which is super critical, not only for dodging, but as you get stronger it will start to take out the smaller enemies that you charge through. Also, you're completely invincible while in the dash, helping you navigate traps as well as escape from sticky situations pretty easily. You do have a shield count that you increase through body parts, and if you take a hit that drains it to 0, you'll have one last chance before it counts as a death. Base lives are 2 in reserve when you start a stage, but can also be increased with body parts. One thing that was weird yet helpful, I was playing on normal, so I don't know if this is true of all difficulties, but the usage of a bomb would also restore some of your health in addition to the massive destruction they do. There's a ridiculous cutscene every time you use a bomb, unless you're in certain areas where it will just do a weird action and slow all the enemies down when you use one, but you do get a few frames of invincibility as well once this is over. This is also true after activating character skills that are unique to each character. Gentleman makes a black hole, Akiri gets a power boost from the Krang-like alien in her stomach, and the giant panda gets little panda turrets. Oh yeah, there's a giant panda playable character in this game, by the way. Something you're likely to notice as you've now had a chance to watch a bit of video, these graphics. I can't immediately recall muddier textures in the game for this console generation. I mean, it's the walls, the liquids, the light reflection, and yeah, even the enemies and playable characters. As you know, I try and be as objective as possible in my reviews, but I think my opinion here is about as close to fact as an opinion can be. This is indefensible. While the variety of stage objectives is appreciated, killing enemy spawn points, taking out a giant boss, killing numbered waves of enemies, or sometimes just reaching the end of a stage, unfortunately there is a little bit too much reusage. I mean, when I needed cash or some more weapon experience, I would go back a rank and play some previous stages to try to increase my ranking to S while gaining experience and credits and parts. And then I'd move on in my rank and play the next stage, and upon entry, our pilot would remark, "Oh man, we already took over this area, but it looks like the fiends are back and they're stronger this time," making you play the exact same stage and goals again in an advanced additional rank. Now, I would estimate that close to maybe half the stages of each rank of the total 41 are replaying this situation. Not only that, but a few stages have a dungeon type area, and when you come out of it, even supposedly completely different dungeons and stages, they use the exact same map for that last stretch of level before exiting. Well, I guess one was at nighttime, so there is that. There is one form of collectible in a stage, and it's usually more about the agility and speed of grabbing it than its hiding, but there are yellow containers called Damned Souls. These will spawn when you enter an area or kill a wave of enemies, or specific times when a boss meter is taken down, and you have about 10 to 15 seconds to grab it. Their sole purpose is 1/3 of stage ranking, the other two being how fast you completed it and how many kills you made. Really, it seems to go by a point summation of all three of these things, so if you really excel in one or two categories, you can compensate to bring your overall stage ranking up, with S being the best. Collecting 80 to 90% of the damn souls in a stage, for example, would still rate you an S for that particular category, so if you get them all, you help the overall S ranking. In addition to stage reuses with Rogue Core, it does also employ the reuse of bosses as regular enemies. Now, I know this isn't completely uncommon, especially in the genre, but there are a couple that are a real pain. They do switch up the element it uses, so at least you get a little variety in the color of the damage you take. Unfortunately, if you've modded your gear or body for protection against one or the other, that's going to be useless too. There are main bosses at the end of each of the mission's ranks that are generally fairly elaborate fights on a pretty epic scale. Now, just so you know, I am aware of critics and user score for this game. As I've listed objectively here, this game is far from perfect, but it's also far from unplayable. There's something about the depth of loot, the weapon selection, and leveling that really gives Rogue Core something special in the twin-stick genre. Now, if you know me, I do love my Contra roots, with one of my claims to fame being finish the original Contra without dying, but I don't feel a nostalgia is affecting my personal enjoyment of Rogue Core. Sometimes it feels like winning a game with a bad referee, just making yourself better to outmatch the unfair calls or disadvantages, learning to live within the system. Overall, Contra Rogue Core struggles visually. The aiming doesn't feel as responsive as you'd like. Enemies are at different heights with no ability for you to angle to aim. The levels are rehashed a bit. Boss monsters are rehashed often as enemies. Weapons overheat, so if that frustrates you, then that'll get you here. The camera angles and close views can leave you frustrated due to enemy visibility, but there's a ton of loot and modifications you can make to your weapons and level them. There's character selection, body part modification. The level ranking system encourages some replay. There are some procedurally generated areas if you want to grind for money and experience. There's a PvP mode that I couldn't experience because I couldn't find anyone to play with, and there's a decent challenge here to be had that doesn't feel cheap once you learn to live within the game's rules. Rated as a twin-stick shooter, Contra Rogue Core on PS4 gets a 57 out of 100 on my true 0 to 100 scale, where 50 is an average game. This is Jiro from Umber Games. Thanks for watching.